Hey guys, today's story is about a narcissistic DM. A few years ago, I was in this D&D group with about 5 others. It wasn't the greatest group, and we all viewed D&D differently, which prevented me from connecting with them. I was more into making characters with a gimmick or theme, and most of the others were just power builders, or didn't plan their characters whatsoever, which is fine. But this post is about my old DM, who I thought was a much kinder person than they were. My DM seemed to be a kind, socially awkward person who was extremely chill. Their sessions were fun, and I always looked forward to playing the next one. After one of their campaigns ended, they said they wanted to do a much more serious campaign with huge side plots, consequences, and a fully fleshed out world. I was pretty excited. However, the closer it got to their campaign starting, the more arrogant they seemingly got. And whenever we talked about their new campaign, they would endlessly brag about how advanced the world was, and how every choice has extremely large consequences, how there was going to be dozens upon dozens of choices, and how much we were going to like it. They would also give us tips on how to be a good DM, and said tips consisted of stuff such as explaining how railroading works, even though we knew what it was, and a bunch of small tips that he had got from the internet. The tips themselves are fine, but the DM would give these tips as if he was speaking to a bunch of idiots. He was incredibly patronizing and would always have this stupid grin on his face. Not a happy or goofy grin, a smug and taunting one. This would have even been passable if he only did it once, but he did it just about every time we spoke of D&D. He eventually said that the story he made was Tolkien quality. The DM would also have very silly rules or restrictions because of how it would fit into their world. He would tell us that warlocks were forbidden without any real reason. Not a story one or a gameplay-based one. Nothing. And yet they would tell us this as if it was the greatest idea on the planet. After listening to the DM pat himself on the back for a few weeks, his campaign finally started. And it was time to see if all of that bragging actually meant something. To which the short answer would be, no. But I would have really enjoyed his campaign if he didn't constantly brag about it. He set such a high expectation that it was inevitable for me not to compare his campaign to what he said it would be. I honestly would have been fine with everything that went on if he hadn't said that it would be the contrary. It wasn't a bad campaign by far, it was just absolutely not what he said it would be. So I got biased, and that's on me. Anyway, here's all the contradictions of his campaign. There will be no railroading, which turned out not to be true, because in Session 1 we were under the threat of being imprisoned. My world is extremely fleshed out. Towns would only have a sentence to be described in. Usually just, there's a lot of water. Every choice matters. The first split choice we made in the campaign had the exact same result as the other choice. In my world, you don't have to follow the story. You can do anything. We had no incentive to do anything but the main questline, as we were only given information about the main questline, and anything else just didn't matter unless a player said that they wanted to act independently. The DM was also very particular about our backstories. We couldn't make up our own hometowns, and had to pick one of the DM's towns. And if our character was a hermit, the DM would force them to be close allies with a town nearby, or something of that merit. And if we didn't include a detail in our backstories, he would make it up themselves. And when the player would say, "Hey, that isn't right," the DM would tell the player that they had a lack of communication while wearing his smug smile. And are these things atrocious? No. But they did get on my nerves, however. But this isn't what made my old DM a narcissist, although a lot of these things are fairly narcissistic. The event that set off the very reason why I'm writing this today was a combat encounter, a particularly unfair one. Not unfair in the sense that the boss had too much HP or did too much damage, but more along the lines of really crappy mechanics. And in the fight, one of us died because of them. I felt like the encounter was a bit too much, so the next time I talked to the DM, I brought it up. And another player who was present also agreed. However, the DM refused to hear us and gave us reasons why the encounter was realistic, and therefore fair. We dropped the discussion and moved on. Later, when the group was talking about character death in D&D, one of the group mentioned that they believed that no players should die in D&D, to which I said, character death was fine as long as it was appropriate. And upon hearing this, the DM thanked me and stated that the encounter was fair out of the blue. In response, I said that I disagreed, to which we then had an argument, which ended in the DM saying that if I didn't like the encounter, then I could leave. And looking back at it, I should've. Later, the DM and I, as well as another player, started talking about the encounter yet again. And that was the last straw for the DM. He stormed off and went into our D&D group chat and started saying that I was being a jerk, and that he wouldn't be able to play D&D for a while, or until I apologized. I started to defend myself while trying to be respectful. In response, he started calling me toxic and tried to manipulate another player into hating me by saying I was harassing them. What he was referring to by this was that I, on numerous occasions, had shown displeasure towards this one player, canceling multiple times at the last minute, which the DM was also mad about. But I had never talked to the player about this, so by the DM's logic, being mad at something someone did means that you're harassing them. But of course the DM didn't really believe what they were saying, they just wanted to turn someone against me. After this, tensions were high, so I wanted to try to talk things out with the DM. They accepted the offer to talk things out to my surprise, and I told them that I wanted an apology for them attempting to tarnish my image, and I tried to tell him that what he did was wrong. He responded to this by saying that I was self-deflecting, and that I was trying to make him seem like the bad guy, and putting the blame for what I did on him. He said this while making me seem like the bad guy, and putting the blame for what he did on me. I tried telling him that he should have talked to me personally instead of having a meltdown in the group chat, and he said that he did try to talk to me, which he didn't. And once he realized that he couldn't convince me that I was the bad guy, he got up and walked away, saying that I will realize how wrong I was in about 2 weeks. After this, the DM started to take some time away from me, and about a week after, he contacted me about how he would like to hang out. I reluctantly accepted, and joined him. And almost immediately, he started to talk about his next campaign and how amazing it would be, all the while bragging about immensely stupid things. I wasn't having this a second time, and later on, after doing some research, I discovered that he had been gaslighting me. Anytime I would oppose him, he would attempt to convince me that I was being delusional, crazy, or unreasonable, or just flat out ignoring me. He only seemed nice when everything was going his way, and the moment it wasn't, he attempted to manipulate me and others to aid with the gaslighting. I could have been nicer, but I was pissed off with the DM for being such an arrogant prick, so I was probably harsher with my words. But overall, I'm glad that this situation had happened. I'm finally free. Tip of the post. Don't put up with people who only care about stroking their ego. Well guys, as someone who's had to deal with narcissists on a daily basis for way too long, if you confront them and they try to gaslight and make you question yourself, don't. Just leave, and you'll be better off for it. But in any case guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have a story that you'd like me to narrate, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.